What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so this video is a requested video from Town Biz. Alright, today is the 33rd anniversary of the Super Bout, the war between Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard. Okay? Two fighters that were seen at the time as the best fighters in their division. And of course, as we all know, Sugar Ray Leonard was deemed the victor by split decision over Marvelous Marvin Hagler on that day. Okay? Now, I'm going to have to say that contrary to most people's opinions, or I think the majority of people's opinions at least, I don't think that Sugar Ray Leonard won that fight. Okay? I just don't think he won that fight. I agree with Town where he said if you turn the sound down and you watch that fight, and you take all bias out the window and you take everything surrounding this fight out the window, there's no way you really can come away with any conclusion other than that Marvin Hagler won that fight. Even if you're being biased, okay? Even if you root for Sugar Ray Leonard, okay? Hagler won that fight, okay? He won the fucking fight. I don't want to hear this shit about Leonard was off for 5 years. I get all of that. I'm going to get into that in a moment, okay? But if you look at the actual fight, Hagler won that fight. He was the aggressor. His punches landed. His punches were more effective. They were more solid. Okay? Leonard's punches, I don't give a fuck what CompuBox says. They didn't land flush. They weren't doing any type of real damage to Hagler. And a lot of his bullshit punches were the result of those flurries. Okay? Most of those punches and the flurries weren't landing, but it was just a psychological thing he was doing. He picked it up from Muhammad Ali. Ali started doing that toward the very end of his career when, you know what I'm saying, he was fighting guys that were giving him problems. So he was doing that to kind of sway the audience and the crowd, I guess, really. And that could help sway the judges. Leonard did it to excess. And another person who fucking did that shit, he's pissed me off because he did it to excess, was Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya was notorious for doing that shit, man. You know what I'm saying? He won a lot of bullshit fights behind that flurry bullshit. But Leonard did not win that fucking fight. And there's nothing nobody in the comment section can say to convince me otherwise. You can give your opinion. If you feel like he won the fight, go ahead and give your opinion. But it's nothing you're going to say to me I haven't heard before. He did not win that fight. But this is what I will say, though. I know why they gave him the fight, though. I know why they gave him the fight. They gave him the fight because he exceeded expectations. That's why they gave him the fight. Also, there was some shenanigans going on too. But the reason why they gave him the fight is, like I said, he exceeded expectations. Like I'm gonna give you an example I'm talking about. I'm gonna go to politics right quick. I remember the first presidential debate back in 2000 between, at the time, Vice President Al Gore and Republican candidate George W. Bush. And the expectation at that time was that Al Gore was going to destroy Bush. Right? He was going to just destroy him. I remember Al Gore just destroying Ross Perot back in '93 when they were debating about NAFTA. Even though, in hindsight, Perot was correct and saying that the NAFTA agreement was going to hurt Americans, middle class Americans, as far as losing jobs. He was 100% correct. But if you listen to the actual debate at that time, Al Gore destroyed him with facts and his overall knowledge of the situation. So the expectation, and plus Gore had just been noted throughout his career as being a great debater. So Bush was not noted as being a great debater. He did not really have a great command of much of any fucking thing. You know what I'm saying? So the expectation was that Gore was going to destroy him. And many Democratic experts thought that this is going to be the moment. This is going to be his Kennedy-Nixon moment. This is going to be his moment where he runs away from it and runs away with the election. It's going to be a landslide, blah, 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 blah. That didn't happen. Okay? Bush held his own. He didn't win, but he held his own. And because of that, plus Al Gore, did some annoying shit at the time. He kept like sighing whenever, he felt like his point wasn't getting across, or if he wasn't getting time to speak. That was very annoying. But because Bush held his own, even though most people would say that Gore still won, but by a small margin, but because Bush more than exceeded expectations, most people saw that as somehow a victory for Bush. Okay? And that's how it was spun. It was a victory for Bush because he exceeded expectations. With this situation, I think anybody that was rooting for Sugar Ray Leonard would see his performance as being enough to justify giving him the victory, even if in their heart they felt like he didn't win. And not only that is part of it, but also when I say shenanigans, this has to be remembered. There was a judge, okay, a Mexican judge, that was affiliated with, governing sanctions that favored Leonard. He scored about 118 to 110, which, if I'm not mistaken, means he had about 10 rounds to 2 for Leonard. How in the fuck do you have that fight 10 rounds to 2 for Sugar Ray Leonard? How? How do you have the fight 10 rounds to 2? There is no fucking doubt in my mind that that judge and individuals within boxing betted on Leonard and made a shitload of money, and Hagler got screwed, not only with the title, but just by the whole fucking boxing itself, man. He didn't get a fair shake. And it's almost like it was bookends for Leonard, for Hagler, and I'll get to that in a moment. But he got screwed. And also, when it comes to the agreements in this fight, everything was slanted in Leonard's favor. He got with these big ass gloves because Leonard, I think at the time, had brittle hands. He also had this big ass ring so that he was able to do his pity pat run, get on his bike shit. And that was in his favor. So it would decrease the ability for Hagler to cut off the ring. And then also, at that time, it was starting to be phased out in the heavyweight division. But at that time, championship bouts were still generally 15-round affairs. Although the 12-rounder was starting to become more the norm. And Leonard had it agreed upon that it would be a 12-round fight. That was a big mistake. I think that was the biggest mistake that Hagler's team made in concession, because if you watch that fight, by the 12th round, Leonard was starting to fade a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You could see it. He was starting to get tired. I think if that fight had went another 3 rounds, I think Hagler would have won that fight more decisively than he already did. All right? I think it wouldn't have been close at all. Okay? This is what I want to also say too about perception and shit. If you watch that fight, listen to the commentators. I can kind of understand some people can get the impression that Leonard won that fight. If you were in the audience, the crowd that night watching that fight, not ringside, I can understand you getting that impression. But if you're ringside and you were actually watching the fight and listening and hearing the punches and when they land, I'm certain people that were ringside, they weren't biased for Leonard, okay, and were being objective, probably would have came away with the conclusion that Hagler won that fight. May not have been a blowout, but most of them would have told you that Hagler won that fight. Okay. But let me say this too. He waited until Hagler slowed down. He ducked fighters. Talking about Sugar Ray Leonard. That's why I will never put him in the same category as Muhammad Ali, even though I know a lot of people compared it to. But Muhammad Ali fought virtually everybody. Sugar Ray Leonard, he ducked people. He ducked not only Marvelous Marvin Hagler, but he also ducked Aaron Pryor. He openly admitted to ducking these guys. And he waited until the Mugabe fight in '86. I think he was ringside for that fight. I think I remember reading that he was ringside with Michael J. Fox, right, the actor. Real hot actor at the time, you know what I'm saying? Teen Wolf, Back to the Future movies, Family Ties. They were ringside together, and he was telling Michael J. Fox, I think I could take him. He's slowing down. Why the fuck do you gotta wait now to fight him? Like, this is what pisses me off with the way how biased the media is. You're sitting there telling me that it's okay for him to fight somebody now because I think I could take him now. He's slowing down. I think I could beat him now. Why don't you fight him when he was in his prime? Why didn't you fight him in 82, 83, 84? You want to wait till everybody else take the sacrifice of fighting him when he's in his prime. And now you want to wait until he slows down. You know what I'm saying? Now you want to wait until he slows down and now you want to get credit for beating a faded Hagler, which you still didn't do, in my opinion. No, man. I just don't put him on I just don't have him in the same regard as I do some of these other guys, man. He's a tremendous fighter. To me, I still have Leonard like top 15-ish, but somewhere in that range, maybe 15 to 20. But I don't have the same regard, man. I tried. I watched the guy. He's impressive. But to me, he ducked too many fucking people, man. To me, that's just a big part of boxing. I just can't put guys who duck people like that up in the same regard as people that fought people. You know what I'm saying? And didn't really duck anybody. But Marvelous Marvin Hagler, look, man, this guy, he's always been fucked over in his career, man. He always was fucked over. He started off his career like beating everybody. All right, he was a dangerous fucking fighter. He was African American. He was a southpaw. He had power, and he had a chin. And that, a guy like that, who wants to fight that? Who wants to fight a guy that has a chin, has power, and is a southpaw, and is tough as nails? You know what I'm saying? Tough as fucking nails. And nobody wanted to fight this fucking dude, man. They didn't even want to spar with this guy. It got so bad, as far as people ducking him and him not getting fights, that his team had to go to Congress. Remember, Marvin Hagler was from Massachusetts. So at that time, you had two of the most powerful politicians in America representing Massachusetts at the time. You had Ted Kennedy, one of the most powerful senators in the United States Senate, as well as from one of the most powerful families in, frankly, the world. And then you had Tip O'Neill, who was the Speaker of the House at the time. And they went to those two powerful politicians and told them what was going on in boxing. And Congress had to threaten boxing. They were going to investigate boxing as to what's going on, as to why this guy who has fought all these people is not getting any fights. Is it racial discrimination? What's going on? So boxing begrudgingly gave, because of the threats from Congress, they gave Hagler a title fight. But because they still were salty about that, they still fucked Hagler over. Hagler won the fucking fight. If you watch the fight, he won the fucking fight. But Congress screwed him. Boxing, they screwed him over and ruled it a draw. So the next time Hagler had a title shot, which was against Alan Mentor, he said, fuck this. I'm not leaving it to judges anymore. I'm going to knock this motherfucking white boy out, which is what he did. And that's why Hagler, for the rest of his career, was so relentless about not leaving it to judges, because he felt if he left it to judges, for the most part, he was going to get fucked. And that's why I said it was bookends to his career, because the one time he relied on judges, okay, when he wasn't able to seal the deal against Leonard as far as knocking him out, he got fucked by the judges. But in particular, that judge that ruled it 118-110. I know when Hagler heard that 118-110 score, he said, they fucked me again. I know he heard it. I know when he heard that 118-110 score, he knew it wasn't in favor for him. I knew at that time he said to himself, they fucked me. And they did. Okay? They did. And this is the coup de grace right here, to show you why Leonard was scared of Hagler. Because had they fought a second time, he wouldn't agree to any of that bullshit. Okay? The next year, Hagler, because he said in interviews, he said the only thing I had to prove in boxing, the only thing that I have to prove, and the only thing that motivates me is a rematch with Leonard. And for the next year, Hagler wanted a rematch against Leonard. Leonard refused. Leonard ducked, which is what he always fucking did. Okay? So, the summer of '88, Marvin Hagler retired from boxing. All right? Then, mysteriously after that, Leonard talked about how he wanted a rematch with Hagler. Now, you know what I'm saying? So, Hagler was like, you know what, man? I ain't got time for these games, man. Fuck you. You know what I'm saying? So, that's why I hold Hagler with regard, man, because he fought everybody. And he beat everybody, in my opinion. I don't give a fuck what that decision said. He beat Leonard. Okay? I'm going to go through this man's resume before I end this video right quick. Let's see if I can find it on BoxRec. Okay. Now, if you look at his career, now he did lose his first significant bout. He did lose to Bobby Watts, okay? And he lost to Willie Monroe. All right? But after that, he would lose again for another 11 years. All right? But he beat Willie Monroe in a rematch TKO. All right? And both of those fights were decisions that he lost against Bobby Watts and Willie Monroe. All right? But he won his rematch against Willie Monroe TKO. And then he won the second fight against Willie Monroe technical knockout. And then after that, he beat Benny Briscoe, unanimous decision. He beat Bobby Watts in a rematch of that Unanimous decision. He lost. He knocked him out. All right. So he avenged that loss. So there was 2 losses that he avenged. The draw that he had against Vito Antuofermo, anybody that watched that fight will tell you that Hagler won that fucking fight. All right. So like I said earlier before, he beat Alan Mentor to win the title. All right. He avenged that bullshit draw against Vito Antuofermo and beat him decisively. He knocked out Mustafa Hamsho. Okay. He knocked out Wilfred Scipion. He beat Roberto Duran. He beat Juan Roldan, excuse me. All right. Once again, he beat Mustafa Hamsho. He pulverized Thomas Hearns. He beat John Mugabe. And in my fucking opinion, he beat Ray Leonard. So to me, he beat all these fucking dudes, man. You know what I'm saying? And I understand why he just said fuck boxing, because, you know, at the end of the day, they fucked him over too many times, man. And he was never celebrated as a fighter. He never got his respect or his just due as a fighter. You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, people like Sugar Ray Leonard, you know what I'm saying, they get to pick and choose and get to retire for 5-6 years and come back and everything is all good. You know what I'm saying? I'll say this about Floyd Mayweather. All right? I don't like Floyd Mayweather. But throughout his career, Floyd Mayweather was the narrative was that he was a cherry picker and that he was a runner. Okay? But yet, for some reason, Sugar Ray Leonard doesn't have any of those things attached to him. Not as ubiquitously as it is with Floyd. You know what I'm saying? I'll say this though: when Floyd was 34 years old, Floyd was to the top of his game. Sugar Ray Leonard got his ass knocked out by Terry Norris. He was 34 years old in a fight he was supposed to win. Like I said, I'm not shitting on Leonard. Don't get me wrong. It still is impressive what he did coming back and being able to perform that level in 1987. It's not me shitting on him, but at the same time, I don't think he beat Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Straight up. I don't think he beat him. So that's pretty much it, man. Tell me what you guys think.